our lives. But before we keep going, can we welcome everybody that's watching online with us this morning? Come on, let's welcome them. Yeah. We would love for you to be with us in the building today, but if you can't be, if you're in town, man, we've got a place for you, a seat for you. We want you to show up and be here with us. But if you're watching from out of town, wherever you are, I believe God is right there with you. And He'll speak to your heart right where you are. You are not alone. You've got a church in Jacksonville, Florida, that is praying for every person, including you, that might be watching today. We're believing that God's going to speak to your heart in a very personal and real way this morning as we talk about demolishing discouragement. Now, here's what I know about discouragement. It is a destructive state of being. It is destructive because it affects you and at times even those around you. But I do believe this, that just like Scripture says, with God all things are possible, I believe we can be equipped to dismantle discouragement as we do everything that we know we're supposed to do and then leave the rest to God. So here's what I want to do this morning. We're going to look at a place in Scripture, 2 Samuel chapter 19, 8 verses there we're going to look at. We're going to run through those, break them down real quick. Then I'm going to tell you what I believe are some fruits or the byproduct of discouragement, something that happens in an environment where you're discouraged or where people get discouraged. But then I'm going to give you some things to do to hopefully turn that around. That was wonderful there. I appreciate that. All right. In 2 Samuel chapter 19, verse 8, or verse 1 actually, God's people had just won an incredible victory. And then we're going to just start with it right there. How many of you would think that winning a victory, winning a battle is a good thing? Half of you do. The rest of you don't know. That's all right. Most of us believe that winning a battle is a big deal. Defeating any adversary is a big deal. It's a good thing. Unfortunately, in this place in Scripture, the adversary was the king's son. Now, if you can make it personal at all, if you've got children, if you've got grown kids or teenagers as kids, imagine them one day trying to take everything that belonged to you, to undermine your leadership, your authority. Now, it would be difficult for us because most of us are barely the king of our own domain, our house, much less the nation or a great part of the world, as David was. But here in this battle against David's son Absalom, he's been killed. The adversary has been silenced. The mutiny has been ended. The wars and the rumors and the schemes and the plotting to pull people away from his father, it's all over now. But instead of a normal celebration or a normal victory after a victory over an adversary, David was overcome with his humanity and his grief at the loss of his son. Now, I know some of you can relate to that. You know, sometimes the things that you strive to achieve, the things that you strive to accomplish, they come at times with the loss of something else or with the moving away from something or the letting go of something, and it brings mixed emotions. And sometimes even to the point where you're kind of discouraged, where you're like, I was ready for a new season, but I didn't know it was going to be at the expense of these comforts, at the expense of these normalcies or the things that I was used to. How many of you understand that moving into new seasons sometimes can be difficult? Well, here, the adversary was David's son, and he was overcome with grief. But remember, Absalom, even though he was his son, he was evil. He despised his father. He was disloyal to his father. He worked tirelessly to contradict everything that his father sought to accomplish and keep together. He was even conspiring against his father to win over the hearts and the loyalty of his father's men, then to overthrow his dad with his own men. It's the worst of the bitterness of betrayal anybody could ever experience. So here in 2 Samuel chapter 19, verse 1, let's read it. It says, Joab, this is the captain of the king's army, David's army. Joab was told the king is weeping and mourning for Absalom. And in verse 2 it says, and for the whole army, the victory that day was turned into mourning. Why? Because on that day the troops heard it said, the king is grieving for his son. Now you got to understand, this could have gone one of two directions. A celebration, But instead they're hearing that the king is grieving, which might mean that the king might be so overcome by his grief that he just decides to take out everybody that took out his son. The security and the safety of everybody is threatened at this moment. So this army that won a victory for David against his own son, silencing his adversaries, now they're just baffled at what's going on. Because the spirit of the king, who was in grief, who was discouraged, was beginning to affect the people in such a profound way. It says in just the same way, our spirits can also affect others. What we're feeling can affect other people. And I know I'm not talking to anybody here. Your feelings and your emotions have never affected anybody around you. You've always kept it to yourself, held on to it, managed it, dealt with it, right? All right, good. Listen, there was no affirmation or victory celebration on this day. No thanks, no great welcome home. Instead, all the men were mourning because their king was discouraged and he was mourning. So the troops became discouraged because Scripture goes on to say in verse 3, the men stole into the city that day as men steal in who are ashamed when they flee from battle. Listen to the New Living Translation. It says they crept back into town. A victorious army silently crept back into town that day as though they were ashamed and had deserted in battle. Can you imagine the confusion? It'd be like coming home, telling everybody, hey everybody, the house is paid off. We're like, we hate this house. The water's not working and the AC went out. We hate the fact that we ever moved here. You were like, I was really excited that we paid the house off there for a minute. Now everybody's jumped on the mutiny boat and they're all wanting to paddle away. We just paid for this sucker. Yeah, I know the air's out and we'll get it fixed, but you understand what I'm saying? The mixed emotions and the defeating blow that would be. So in spite of victory on this day, the picture here is one of discouragement. Listen to verse 4. The king covered his face and cried aloud, "Oh, my son, Absalom! Oh, Absalom, my son, my son." Verse 5 says, then Joab, David's captain of his army, went into the house to the king and said, today you have humiliated all your men. Now, how many of you know that's a bold man right there? I mean, he's got to know he's got a place to be able to walk in and look straight at the king and say, hey, you are humiliating your men today. Now, I've got to believe it was like that because he's a warrior. I don't think he was coming in saying, Starbucks? Would you like a cold beverage, a cold treat, something? I got to talk to you about something. I got to think that he came right in with diplomacy and with honor, but at the same time, he's got to bring this difficult word to the king. Listen, you've humiliated all your men who have just saved your life and the lives of your sons and daughters and the lives of your wives and concubines. You love those who hate you, and you hate those who love you. That may not be true, but that's what it looks like. You have made it clear today that the commanders and their men mean nothing to you. Now, that may not be true, but that's what it looks like by his actions as a result of the discouragement and the despair he was feeling. He said, I see that you would be pleased if Absalom were alive today and all of us were dead. That may not be true, but that's what it looks like. That's what that discouragement that is now passing down to everybody else in the city feels like. And because it feels like that, that is their perspective. That's what they see. Now listen to his advice. It's powerful advice. You may have been wondering why talking about discouragement is very spiritual. I'm about to show you. Well, I think I kind of showed you how critical it is not to be so discouraged that everything around you is tainted by it. But listen to verse 7. This is advice to David. Now go out and encourage your men. I swear by the Lord that if you don't go out, not a man will be left with you by nightfall. Hello, you just got my attention. This will be worse for you than all the calamities that have come on you from your youth till now. The power of discouragement was so great that when one man succumbed to it, who was in a position of leadership, who people saw, who the perception of this man, it was so powerful that it passed down to the entire city, to an entire army, to an entire company, and a family. Y'all following me? And it was so great in its power that it was going to cause people just run for the hills to be away from it. And then the captain of the king's army and is telling him, listen, this is so overbearing, so overwhelming for everybody that there's no way they can stand under it. You're going to be all by yourself by tonight if you don't do something to contradict what's happened. Listen to David's response, verse 8. So the king got up and took his seat in the gateway, a place of position and power that when he was there, everybody knew everything was okay. The one in authority, the one who rules over the army, he is seated in that position of power and authority. It's all good. It had been empty, but now it was okay. And merely by his presence, by taking his position, by fulfilling his role and his duty as king, when the men were told, it goes on to say, the king is sitting in the gateway, they all came before him. Now, David was just told they're all going to run for the hills. But taking his position to encourage the men drew them back to him. Let me give you a few things that I think are powerful connected to discouragement. And number one is this: it's demoralizing. It's demoralizing. We read it there in verse 3. Everybody came back into the city like they were ashamed to have even been a part of this army that took out this adversary. They were so demoralized by the discouragement of their king. Now, I'm not saying, I feel like I need to clarify this or balance this for a second. I'm not saying that you can never be discouraged. Please, say, everybody respond to that. Say, okay. Well, that was about half of you. So y'all don't go out and say that I said it is wrong to be discouraged. As a Christian, you can't get discouraged. I am not saying that. I'm telling you that discouragement left unattended can be one of the most demoralizing things, not just to you, but also to people around you. Here's another fruit of discouragement. It can bring a loss of perspective. It can bring a loss of perspective. It causes you to not see things as they really are. Joab told David, he was the king's captain of his armies. He said, you've become so focused on the one who hated you that you're taking it out on the ones who love you. Talk about a lack of perspective. You're taking out your discouragement on the ones who defended you. Now, they were the ones who defeated the one who hated you. But now your emotion, your discouragement for the one who hated you is greater than your affection for the ones who love you. And that's a crazy lack of perspective, isn't it? They've won a victory for you and they're coming home humiliated because you failed to acknowledge their victory in battle for you today. Now listen, I know this can happen to all of us. We can be so overtaken by something that it causes us just to be pushed back for a minute. It causes us to lose sight of what really is true for a few minutes. Because when someone says something about you that's not true and uses painful words to do it or painful tone, it'll knock you backwards. But don't let it cause you to lose your perspective. You may be going through a difficult season financially, emotionally, spiritually, physically. And what you're walking through may be true. It may be a reality for you right now. But don't let it discourage you to the point that you lose perspective of greater things. When our discouragement blinds us to the actions of the very ones who love us and are trying to help us, that's when we know we've let discouragement get deeper than it should. You following me? And I know how most of us are. Most of us rarely like to be encouraged in a moment where we just need to feel discouragement for a second, don't we? Is it better said that way? But don't let your perspective get askew because the ones who love you are trying to encourage you and help you, because you need a moment to wallow in that. You with me? No one wants to diminish your experience. Nobody's doing that. I just want you to hear that discouragement is a deadly trap. And it is a rabbit hole that does not lead to a good place, because it causes us to lose our perspective. Here's the third thing that discouragement can do. It can cause people to feel devalued. It can cause people to feel devalued. It's said here by Joab, it seems that the men in verse 6, they mean nothing to you. It seems the men mean nothing to you. I know there have been times even in my own life where the discouragement about a thing or a season was so great that I got quiet or got angry. It depends on your emotional processing mechanism in those times. All of us kind of respond in different ways. When you figure those things out, it's really helpful as an adult to know, hey, I'm just responding to this thing because it's kind of connected to something I've experienced before, and where I got angry before or quiet before or lashed out before. I got to try not to do that here, but I can promise you that your actions are communicating something. They're speaking to other people something. And the last thing we want discouragement to do in our lives is to cause the people around us to feel devalued. Because people will run to where there is value placed on them. And you don't want the people around you to run away from you because you're in a discouragement season. Joab said that it seems like the men mean nothing to you. This was their perspective in the void of discouragement, or a void of encouragement. Here's the fourth thing, and the last one I want to give you. Another fruit of discouragement is strife. It's strife. And I know none of us knows what strife's like, do we? Never had any, except maybe on the way to church this morning. None of y'all had any. Y'all, when we walked in the building this morning, everything that this place holds was in the middle of the room. In the middle of the room. No one's going to listen to this, I don't think, from the administration here. But I made a call this week and said, is there anything we need to be ready for? Because y'all notice these floors have never looked better, have they? Look at them. This is the cleanest they've ever been. Y'all could sit on these this week because they cleaned them. Well, in the process of cleaning, everything was in the middle of this room. Everything. So you can see a little workaround we did there in the back of the room. But my personality is kind of a personality go, you got to respond. And I did. I took out my phone because I made a call and said, anything I need to be ready for. This was my response. It's all good. Y'all are ready to go. So when someone meets you on the sidewalk and says, you need to take a look, I'm not sure what we're going to do, stuff inside me starts kind of boiling a little bit. I've been told I'm always at a simmer. Anybody like me? You're kind of at a simmer. I think that's why I sweat as much as I do. I'm always simmering. I'm ready to go if you want to cook something. Just tell me about it. Who are we taking out? I mean, I'm kind of there. I've got some kids that are kind of just like me. But I'm growing. It's taken a few years of counseling. I'm getting better. But I had to temper my response while the person who was waiting to see and hear me say what we were going to do gauged my reaction. And if it had not been for Suzette here on the front row who said, we could just put some pipe and drape around it. I said, what she said. That was my big leadership skill moment right there. It's what she said. And we did that. And then I put the phone down. In fact, I got to erase the text. I think it's still on my phone. I didn't send the text I was going to send. Because I thought, in the moment, it seems like you let that build and that discouragement hits. You just lash out. You let everybody know I'm discouraged and how upset I am. Because they just need to know, right? Sometimes they might. And there might be a proper place for that. And there might be a proper setting for that. And there might be a proper tone for that. But you've got to be careful that your discouragement doesn't bleed out from you and infect, not affect, but infect everybody else. 2 Samuel 19 verse 9 said, throughout the tribes of Israel, all the people were arguing among themselves. Why in the world were they all arguing? Well, because men had come home after a battle, humiliated. And because of the king's discouragement, now they were just frustrated, and everything that may have been suppressed by them, all of the emotions that they may have been feeling as a result of their adversary, were now just flooding out of them, just coming out of them. And now they're arguing against the very people that they were fighting alongside of. Because that's the power of discouragement. It will bring strife to any place it is present. It's true in the home. It's true in the workplace. It's true in a church. And y'all, I know what I'm talking about. I've worked in some of those churches where I thought they were kinder in a bar than they were in this business meeting in the church office. I've been in those. And listen, I said from the very first day we started our church, we will never have strife. If there's discouragement, we'll have a prayer meeting. If there's division, we'll have a worship service. How about that, y'all? And so you'll either come and get in God's presence, waiting for your moment, and then God will deal with your heart, or the presence will just kind of push you out. But we will never have strife. And we never have. And we never will. Because strife will kill anything in its path. When people are discouraged or demoralized, if there is something under the surface, some suppressed emotion, it will come to the surface when they're discouraged. And I know you know what I'm talking about. Because sometimes you wind up talking about things other than what actually has just taken place. Because that suppressed emotion comes to the surface, and discouragement is like the gateway to releasing everything that's upsetting you. So, the answer for David in light of all that was going on was right there in verse 7. We read it. Joab said to David, now go out and encourage your men. Go out and encourage your men. That's my job here today. If you're discouraged, if you're in the midst of strife, if you feel devalued or you're devaluing people, if you have lost your perspective, if you've been demoralized because of the extensive nature of the season that you're in, I'm here to encourage you. Y'all should have said better than that. Amen to that than Mark did. Mark, it's just me and you. I'm going to talk to Mark today. How about that, Mark? It's just me and you today. So we're going to encourage. And Mark, no, I know Mark needs it because he works at a law firm, one of the largest around. He has to be an encourager. I'm sure you do. Encourage your men. Listen, if you want people to follow your leadership, encourage them. And I'm not just talking to them because you're the CEO of a company. If there's more than two of you in a group, there's somebody who's going to be the leader there. The leader of fun, the leader of work, and the leader of intelligence and making a plan. But whatever type of leader you are, whatever giftedness you have, whatever role that you've got in the space and that place that God has put you in, you need to be an encourager. You're going to have to encourage people, because if you don't encourage them, just like Joab said, people will leave you, and it'll be worse for you than the discouragement that you're currently experiencing. All right. So here was the result of David's encouragement. Verse 14. It says, he won over the hearts of the men of Judah so that they were all of one mind. His encouragement won over the hearts of all the people so that they were all of one mind. Now, it doesn't say that he came up with a crafty plan. It doesn't say he came up with a blueprint for changing the world. You know what brought all these people together in unity? Encouragement. Encouragement brought them together in unity. Because I've been baffled at times when I see certain leaders and I see what they've put their hands to and how that's been blessed, and I know them personally or I meet them and I'm thinking they can barely string two sentences together. And then you're like, how in the world is there that kind of success or that momentum or that growth around what it is that they're doing? I don't understand. Well, it took me as a pastor about 15 years before I realized this, because my pastor doesn't know what it means to look at a detail. The people around him will tell him that. And that's where I heard this. Have you ever noticed he's got the most incredible number 2 person behind him? I'm like, well, how do you get a number 2 person like that behind you who loves the details, who's managing things? I mean, what in the world? Pay attention to my pastor. He's one of the greatest encouragers I've ever known. Most incredible encouragers. Now, he knows Scripture and has got an incredible teaching gift, but an encourager like you wouldn't believe. Let me give you a little example. Their church bought land in their city in California. The case has become a case study in eminent domain because the city took all of their land, multiplied dozens of acres of land, and declared eminent domain over it, saying it no longer belongs to you. We're going to give you what we think it's worth. They needed this because they were doing 7 services a weekend where there was not enough parking for even one service. They were parking in streets, busing people in from schools around the church. Now I'm thinking, I don't know if people would be coming in droves where we were busing them in from Fruit Cove Middle and busing them in from Bartram Plaza down. I don't know if we would ever have enough going on for that. But they were having all that go on. The city took their land. Ultimately, they discovered they had an under-the-table deal with a Costco to sell them that land, which meant tax revenue for the city. My pastor told me this. This went on for 10 years. For 10 years, they were in a lawsuit with the city. While he's wanting to say at the same time, we love our city. We want to reach our city. They're doing caricatures of him in the newspaper. They're making fun of him. They're saying bad things about him. All the while, their church continues to grow. And my pastor's saying to God, God, we've got to do something. We don't have room. And he said, all he heard God say was, you keep adding services. I'll take care of the rest. 10 years this went on. For 10 years, the church was in prayer. If he watches this, I might be in a little trouble. He told me, he said, after our very first prayer meeting, I knew everything was going to be okay. I'm like, but you let everybody keep praying? He said, oh, absolutely. Our family needed to have that investment and be bringing that before God. But he said, I knew in my heart it was going to be a settled deal. I said, so what'd you do? He said, I just kept encouraging people. Because it's very discouraging when you come into a building that's completely full and there's nowhere to sit, and they tell you you're going to go in that room or this room or that room or that room or this room, out in this hallway. We got no space. We got no space. That's discouraging. So his job became number one encourager. And they kept growing. I've been there before when it was multiple services and went to every one of them and said, why y'all want to go to another service? It's just like the last one. I'm like, I don't know. I just got to pick up on something. And listen to that man stay focused on what was most important, kept his perspective, but at the same time knew the power of encouragement. That even in a discouraging time, in a discouraging season, a demoralizing season, a season where it looks like there is no answer, this is never going to get better. Are you kidding me? Who are we to go up against the city? Well, the city ultimately lost. And a man in the city, for $1 a year, was shutting down his golf course country club and said, y'all can use it for whatever you want. He owned the racetrack, horse racetrack behind it. Used the clubhouse, so they piped in services to the clubhouse. Because it's California, they put chairs and things out on the lawn, projected the service out there for $1. Man was not a Christian. He just didn't like what the city did. Well, not only did the city lose, they gave him a better piece of property, more property, paid all their legal fees, had to approve all of their plans, and pass it on through. But it took 10 years. 10 years. And now he's in transition with his son, turning the church over to him. And they're still growing. And in the pandemic, they grew. He was in an accident where he literally just severed his vocal cords and couldn't breathe, was on a breathe. They thought he was going to die. Church grew. I'm like, how in the world? But I'm telling you, when you're there, encouragement is the culture in that church. Absolutely powerful. Says of David, he won over the hearts of the men of Judah so that they were all of one mind. How did he do this? It was the power of encouragement. This is a value of Family Life Church. Encouragement. I believe that this place should be filled with encouragers. Scripture tells us in Romans, it is the goodness of God that draws men to repentance. Even when it looks bleak all around you, it is still the goodness of God that draws men to repentance. That's encouragement right there. In Hebrews 3, verse 13, it says, but encourage one another daily as long as it is called today. Well, there's always a today, isn't there? And what are we supposed to do in that day? Encourage one another, so that none of you may be hardened by sin's deceitfulness. What does it mean to encourage? The very word itself comes from two parts. Para, which means to come alongside, and kaleo, which means to speak or to call or to invite. Isn't that interesting? Encouragement is almost like an invitation. And you know what's also interesting about this word? It's the word used to describe the Holy Spirit. What is the Holy Spirit constantly doing? He's coming alongside and calling and inviting you into all of the goodness of God. He's coming alongside of you and calling you into the healing of God. He's coming alongside of you and calling you into the wholeness of God. He's coming alongside of you and calling you into the joy and the peace of God, the comfort of God, constantly. That's His job description. Book of John tells us He comes to convince the world that they're sinners in need of a Savior. Then He comes to convince those that are saved of their righteousness. And then He comes to convince the enemy that he's been judged and defeated. So the Holy Spirit's constantly coming along your side and saying, hey, Dave, come on, man. It's a great day. Let's go. You've got this. You can do this. Greater is He that's in you than he that's in the world. Nothing can stand against you when God's favor is behind you and pulling you on. You following me? Something about encouragement invites and it calls. This verse makes it clear that we're supposed to give and to receive encouragement from each other daily. If I could show you my cell phone, there are people I haven't seen or talked to in forever, and every once in a while, and you might not like it, every once in a while, I'll just type out a text to one of them, and I'll copy and paste that sucker to everybody I hadn't heard from in years. And then all of a sudden, my phone just starts blowing up. It's like ding, 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 ding. Everybody's doing the same thing back to me. Well, you might say, all you did was copy and paste. And I would say, isn't that sad? That's all it takes to just call something out of people. And every once in a while, I'll customize it. But usually I'll say, hey, haven't heard from you a long time, just thinking about you. Hope you're doing well. Hope everything's going okay. If you ever need anything from me, just let me know. I'm right here for you. Boom, it just starts firing like crazy, because that's the power of encouragement. It calls, it invites, it pulls, it draws. And it says that you and I are supposed to be doing this daily. And you know when I have found it to be most effective? When I feel the least like doing it. Really, seriously, when I feel the least like doing it, when I'm sitting there and I can't even focus and concentrate. You know, I'm distracted by Facebook, Instagram, and those are the only two I got, everybody. I ain't got time for the rest of it. When I'm flipping channels, when I haven't even paid attention to what's on the channel, when I'm reading and I haven't paid attention, I don't know if y'all read like me, and I'm like, I've missed every word that I know I just read. There's nothing that I comprehended. Every once in a while, I'll just grab the phone and just start texting. To my pastor, I'll send him a text of pictures of shark's teeth, because it really gets his goat. Because we took him to find some, didn't find one. He thinks it's a myth. I'm like, no. I'll take a picture, show him, this is some more of my stash, and he and I'll start talking. Power of encouragement. Encourage one another daily. Let me give you 3 thoughts to go with this, and then I'm done, all right? Number 1, we must continually encourage one another. We must continually encourage one another. Notice it says daily. Encourage one another daily in Hebrews 3:13. Not once in a while. This is so important, everybody, that we're told to continually encourage and be encouraged. I think we ought to get in the habit of encouraging one another. Some of you say, well, it's not really my personality. Well, it doesn't matter. It didn't say anything about your personality there. It's talking to church people, Christian people. Encourage one another daily. Encourage one another daily. Doing this so often that it becomes a part of who you are. It becomes a part of what you do. It becomes a part. Now listen, if you're that task type A person, put it on your reminders. Encourage from 9:25 to 9:30. Put on a list if that's you. Encourage from 8:30 to 8:45, whatever. 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Encourage your kids. Y'all laugh at me, but I had that as a reminder years ago. I would text them throughout the day, occasionally, because I needed to be reminded to do it. We've got to continually encourage one another. Here's the second thought. We must encourage others today, continually, and today. Be intentional about this today. At home, at work, gosh, man, with your church family. I firmly believe, with all my heart, that there wouldn't be an empty seat in this building if we so overwhelmed people with encouragement that it just ultimately just drew them. You with me? Now, we've done things in the past. We've handed out food at the Veterans Park. We've done free car wash. We've done all those things are wonderful. But there is nothing more powerful than when every single one of us becomes an intentional encourager. An intentional encourager. Encourage, 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 encourage. Hey, would you like to visit church with me? Encourage, 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 encourage. Hey, would you like to go with me today? We'll go to lunch together afterwards. Encourage, encourage, encourage. Eventually it's like, oh my God. Yes, okay, fine, I'll go. I think that's what happens. Until you're Jesus and you're opening eyes of the blind, we got encouragement working for us. He drew crowds for a lot of different reasons, but I believe encouragement was also one of them. So we need to encourage each other today. In fact, let me give you this assignment, if you will. Before you close your eyes tonight, find somebody to encourage that's not in your house. Find somebody to encourage that's not in your house. Maybe it's the person you know you've got to face tomorrow or call tomorrow. Sow a little seed of encouragement today. That's just not going over very well. Because here's what I also believe, the third and the last thing. Encouragement is an investment in others. It's an investment. Listen to Hebrews 3:13 again. It goes on to say, encourage one another so that none of you may be hardened by sin's deceitfulness. So there's a purpose for encouragement. See, because in this world, things are just going to harden humanity, harden the heart and the emotions of humanity. You're going to come up against enough things that just make you rigid and tense. Anybody know anybody that's rigid and tense? None of you knows anybody that way? Yeah, I thought so. You know one of the things that'll soften that? Encouragement. When I first started pastoring, this guy right here was just born, and there was a lady in our church, Miss Bet. And I think, would you have him on Thursday and you were singing on Sunday, something like that? Tammy was just, you couldn't keep Tammy out of church. She held him like the first day that we were in church. Now, Miss Bet's husband was the most gruff, rigid dude you'll ever meet in your life. Hal. Betty. Her name was Betty. Her husband, just a rough dude. But she loved this boy. In fact, we let her keep him overnight. She loved him so much one time. And they lived over in Riverside. Dropped him off with all his stuff and just thought, well, I think she loves him more than we do. He's probably going to be cared for in a greater way there than with us. Well, her husband one day, because of the volume of the music, decided, I don't like it here anymore and I don't want to go anywhere and I want to go somewhere else. Separating her from David was like ripping a limb off. And they did leave. And we talked to her one time and said, why did you do that? She said, because he's my husband. And I honored, even though I don't agree with it, I honored, and I'm getting to a point here. I'm not saying you got to do everything your spouse says they want to do when you know you don't want to do it. And it's not, I'm getting to a point. Eventually, it wasn't anymore that it was just loud music. But I watched the way that she honored her husband and encouraged her husband, who really, to me, just needed to be smacked upside the head most days. But she honored him and encouraged him. And they had an incredible marriage. They're not alive anymore. Incredible marriage. They're wonderful people to be around because of encouragement. One of them decided they would be the encourager. They would be the one who just, okay, all right, it'll be all right, everything will be good. David just had to keep going and visiting her every once in a while, so she was all right. Man, if she could see him today, it would be horrible for the rest of us to have to watch that, I'm sure. But encouragement is an investment. A culture of encouragement, I think, will help people remain faithful in their walk with God. And I don't know if you've noticed this in your season or your time with us as a church, that people kind of come and go from time to time. They disappear. I think because their heart gets hardened, they get disappointed, they experience discouragement. And when that happens, we need to be there to encourage. I know too many people call them and tell them, son, you need to get in church. You're going to hell if you don't. Every bit of that may be true, but that's never been a thing that drew anybody, not constructively. What does? Man, I was thinking about you. God put you on my heart. I don't know what you're going through. I don't know what season you're in, but I've been praying for you. Is there anything I can do for you? In fact, can I take you to lunch? Can I stop by your house? Would you want to go to Starbucks with me? Do you need anything? It's overwhelming, the power of encouragement. So let's do everything that we can to keep this culture of encouragement alive and thriving in our church. Would y'all help me do that? Yeah. Let me read you one last verse, a couple of verses. If any of you are discouraged right now, Isaiah 40, verse 29, He gives strength to the weary. This is God, and increases the power of the weak. Even youths grow tired and weary, and young men stumble and fall. But those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint. Isaiah 41:10, so do not fear, for I am with you. This is God speaking. I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you, and I will help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. That's encouragement for you today. Whatever you're going through, let that be your encouragement. Go ahead and stand to your feet this morning. Whatever you're walking through, let that be your encouragement. He is your strength. He will keep you up. He will uphold you in whatever season you may be walking through. So let me pray over you this morning before we head out today. Father, if there's anybody under the sound of my voice, either in this building or watching online, Father, I pray right now if discouragement is present, that they would be encouraged by knowing that fear has no place in their life, that you're with them. They don't need to be discouraged because you are their God. You will strengthen them. You will help them. You will hold them up, Father, with your hand. I pray that over you right now in Jesus' name. I place His name over you. I bless you in the name of Jesus. May His wisdom, His courage, His guidance, His strength, may the faith that is in your heart because His word is present there, may it rise to the surface and see you through to the next season in life. I pray that over you now in Jesus' name. I bless you. If you receive that, would you say amen? Amen. Come on, let's thank God for His word today. Amen. Listen, if you are experiencing discouragement, keep your head up. Keep your head up. Keep your head up. Keep your head up. Keep moving forward. God is with you and He'll hold you up. If you need anything, though, if you feel like you're beyond your own ability, all you got to do is let us know. You can actually email me, Steve, that's my name, at familylifechurch.cc. Steve at familylifechurch.cc. I'll do all I can to steer you in the right direction and get you the help that you need so that discouragement doesn't overtake you. Amen? Listen, I love you guys. I'm so glad you were here today. Thanks for worshiping with us. Y'all have an incredible rest of the day. Encourage somebody before you go to sleep tonight. Y'all be friendly. We'll see you next Sunday.